They say the ones who appear the most distant are often the ones who feel the deepest. The ones who stay silent are the ones whose hearts speak the loudest, just not in words, but in quiet gestures, in hesitation, in the spaces between what they show and what they hide. Love, for them, isn't absent. It's just afraid of being seen. Love hidden beneath fear is one of the most paradoxical experiences in the emotional world of an avoidant individual. They crave connection as deeply as anyone else, but to them, love is not simply a source of joy. It's a potential threat to their emotional stability. Deep inside, they long to be seen, to be understood, and to be accepted. Yet the very thought of being emotionally exposed feels like standing unguarded before a storm. This fear is not born from a lack of care, but from an inner history where vulnerability once led to pain, rejection, or abandonment. So when they feel genuine affection for someone, their instinct is not to reach forward, but to retreat, to preserve the safety of their solitude, even as their heart yearns to connect. An avoidant's fear of intimacy is rarely visible on the surface. They often appear composed, self-reliant, and emotionally distant. But beneath that calm exterior lies a deep struggle between desire and defense. Their mind tells them that closeness leads to loss of control, that opening up may invite hurt, that being dependent on someone means risking disappointment. And so they build invisible walls, walls made of emotional restraint, measured words, and controlled gestures. But behind those walls, the heart beats with an intensity they themselves may not fully understand. Their love, though unseen, exists as a quiet current beneath their fear, waiting for safety to allow it to flow freely. When someone touches the emotional core of an avoidant, it triggers both yearning and panic. The more they care, the more they fear losing themselves within the depth of that feeling. This duality creates a pattern where their love becomes almost invisible, expressed not through open declarations, but through subtle acts that often go unnoticed. They might check in quietly when you're struggling, remember small details about your life, or show up in moments that matter, even if they don't say the words their heart feels. These small gestures are their language of affection, their way of saying "I care" without confronting the vulnerability that direct emotional expression demands. Their fear of love doesn't mean their emotions are shallow. It means they feel too deeply to handle the weight of it without anxiety. They may distance themselves after moments of closeness, not because they have lost interest, but because closeness triggers an unconscious alarm. It feels unsafe to depend, to rely, to need. Love for them is both a source of beauty and a reminder of old wounds. So they hide it, not because it isn't real, but because revealing it feels like surrendering control, and control is what keeps them emotionally safe. The irony is that the more they suppress their feelings, the stronger those feelings grow, and the harder it becomes to hide them entirely. There are moments when their love slips through the cracks of their defenses. A lingering gaze, a softening of tone, a rare openness in conversation. But as soon as they sense exposure, they retreat again, reinforcing their distance. To outsiders, this seems confusing or contradictory, but for the avoidant, it is self-preservation. Love awakens the part of them that longs for connection, yet also the part that fears being consumed by it. They are caught between the soul's desire to merge and the ego's need to protect, living in constant tension between approach and avoidance. Deep inside, they know that their fear robs them of the intimacy they secretly crave. But love hidden beneath fear is not a lack of courage. It's a reflection of how fragile the human heart can be when it has learned that closeness brings pain. The avoidant does not choose to hide love. Their subconscious chooses it for them out of a need to survive emotional chaos. Their love is real, but it is wrapped in silence, guarded by hesitation, and revealed only in fragments. It exists quietly, deeply, and sincerely, beneath the mask of distance that protects them from the very love they so desperately want to feel. Contradictory behavior is one of the most defining signs that an avoidant individual is secretly in love but cannot bring themselves to admit it. Their actions and emotions often move in opposing directions, creating confusion for both themselves and the person they care about. When their heart begins to open, their instincts close in. When they feel drawn toward you, their defense mechanisms push them away. It's not a deliberate attempt to manipulate or confuse. It's the natural tension between their longing for connection and their deep fear of losing control. Inside their mind, love does not feel safe. It feels unpredictable, and unpredictability threatens their emotional equilibrium. So they respond by creating distance, even when every part of them wants to come closer. This contradiction is not a lack of interest, but a sign of inner conflict. When they feel something real, something that awakens genuine emotion, their first reaction is to suppress it. The more meaningful the connection, the stronger the instinct to retreat. They might suddenly become cold or aloof after a deep conversation, or they may stop responding after a moment of emotional closeness. This withdrawal isn't rejection, it's their unconscious way of protecting their heart from vulnerability. They pull away because the emotions are too intense to process all at once. To them, vulnerability feels like exposure, and exposure feels like danger. In one moment, you might see warmth in their eyes, an openness that feels real and inviting. In the next, you might sense a wall rising between you, a shift in tone, a sudden disinterest that doesn't match what you just experienced. This inconsistency is the avoidant's silent struggle manifesting in behavior. They want to let you in, but they don't know how to stay open without feeling overwhelmed. To protect their sense of autonomy, they push back against their own emotions, convincing themselves that distance is safety. But underneath that cool exterior, the feelings they deny keep growing stronger, forming a quiet attachment they will not admit even to themselves. This pattern can make their love appear unpredictable, almost impossible to read. One day they reach out, offering affection or thoughtful attention, and the next they seem detached or indifferent. But this hot and cold behavior reveals the depth of their emotional conflict. They don't want to hurt you. They are simply fighting an internal battle between the part of them that yearns for closeness and the part that has learned to equate closeness with loss of self. For them, love threatens to dissolve their boundaries, to expose them to rejection or disappointment, so they oscillate between engagement and withdrawal. This pendulum swing is their mind's way of trying to balance emotion with self-protection. Their contradictory behavior also shows up in subtle ways. They might act disinterested in your affection, but still remember every word you said. They may avoid deep conversations, but find small excuses to be near you. They may downplay their feelings, but react strongly to the thought of you pulling away. These contradictions are not random. They are reflections of their inner chaos. Every moment of closeness triggers a wave of emotion they can't fully control, so they retreat until they feel safe again. But once they retreat, the emptiness of distance reminds them how much they care, and they find themselves drawn back toward you once more. This constant push and pull is exhausting for them, though they rarely show it. They often convince themselves that they are better off detached, but their actions betray their emotions. Their love is present in every moment they hesitate, every time they reach out and then retreat, every silent look that lingers longer than it should. These contradictions are the language of a heart at war with itself. The avoidant person does not express love through consistency. They express it through struggle. Their behavior may appear confusing, but beneath the surface lies a simple truth. They care deeply, but caring makes them afraid. The contradictions you see are not rejection. but the visible signs of a love they are still learning to feel without fear. Silent devotion is the truest expression of an avoidant's hidden love, the quiet way they show affection without ever saying the words aloud. For them, love is not something to be declared with grand gestures or emotional outpourings. It is something to be shown through presence, reliability, and unspoken care. They rarely articulate their feelings because words feel dangerous, too exposing, too revealing of the vulnerability they spend a lifetime trying to manage. Instead, their love hides within small, easily overlooked actions. They might remember the things that matter to you, notice when your mood shifts, or offer help without being asked. Their gestures may seem insignificant, but for someone who fears emotional exposure, these moments are monumental. They are the language of an avoidant's heart, spoken in silence. An avoidant may never say, "I love you," but they might drive across town to help you with something small or ensure you're safe after a long day. They might not reach for your hand in public, but they'll make sure you're comfortable, that your world feels just a little easier when they're around. These are not random acts of kindness. They are expressions of emotional loyalty carefully disguised as practicality. Because vulnerability feels threatening, they prefer to express love through actions that allow them to remain in control. To others, this restraint can seem cold, but to the avoidant, it is how they protect both themselves and the person they care for from the chaos they associate with open emotion. Their devotion often appears in their consistency rather than their expression. They show up when it matters most, even when they don't have the words to explain why. In times of crisis, they might appear unexpectedly, quietly offering support, their presence steady and grounding. When they care, they pay attention in silence, observing what brings you comfort, what triggers your pain, and how to navigate your emotions without overwhelming themselves. Their love is not flamboyant. It's cautious, deliberate, and built on observation rather than confession. They show affection by listening more than speaking, by remembering small details you thought they'd forgotten, by being dependable in ways you never asked for. This silent devotion often grows out of the avoidant's deep internal struggle. They fear losing independence, but at the same time, they cannot ignore the pull of genuine connection. So they compromise by expressing love in ways that don't threaten their boundaries. They may not open up emotionally, but they express care through structure and responsibility. They might fix things, offer advice, or help you solve problems as a way to stay connected without feeling exposed. These gestures are their way of saying, "I'm here," without uttering a word that could make them feel vulnerable. Their devotion hides in their attentiveness, in the way they anticipate needs without being asked, in the steady rhythm of quiet loyalty that underlines their interactions. What makes their love so hard to recognize is that they don't fit the typical pattern of emotional expression. They rarely engage in deep verbal intimacy, but when you look closer, you'll find evidence of affection in everything they do. They care about your comfort, your well-being, and your sense of stability, even when they don't voice it. Sometimes, their silence is not detachment, but an act of restraint, a way to prevent overwhelming themselves with emotions they don't yet know how to process. Their stillness, their calm, their subtle gestures all become symbols of their emotional investment. To truly understand an avoidant's love, one must learn to listen to what isn't said. Their devotion does not live in declarations or promises, but in the invisible threads that tie their actions to your happiness. They may not always be emotionally available, but their love is steady and protective in ways that words can't capture. Their silence is not emptiness, it's depth contained. They love without noise, without demand, without expectation, quietly building emotional safety in their own guarded way. Their devotion may be silent, but it is profound, enduring, and often far stronger than the loudest confessions of affection. It is love disguised as composure, care hidden behind calmness and commitment, expressed not through words, but through the quiet consistency of being there when it truly matters. Emotional conflict is at the core of what makes an avoidance love so complex, confusing, and deeply human. Within them exists a silent war between two opposing forces: the longing to be loved and the fear of being vulnerable. They crave closeness but equate intimacy with danger, connection with loss, and love with surrender. When they begin to care for someone, it doesn't bring peace. It stirs a storm inside them. Their heart leans forward, wanting to trust, to open, to feel seen, but their mind pulls back, reminding them of every moment in the past where trust led to pain or dependence ended in disappointment. They live suspended between these two states, wanting to feel safe in love, but fearing that love will take their safety away. This inner battle makes their emotions unpredictable. At times, they can be affectionate, attentive, and engaged, allowing small glimpses of their true feelings to surface. Then suddenly, they grow distant, detached, and unreachable, as if their emotions have disappeared. But their feelings don't vanish. They retreat behind carefully built defenses. Their withdrawal isn't a lack of care, it's a reflex of self-preservation. To them, love threatens to dissolve the boundaries they've constructed to survive emotionally. They may even convince themselves that pulling away is the right thing to do, that by keeping distance, they're preventing pain. Yet, beneath that rationalization lies a heart that aches for the very connection it avoids. For the avoidant, closeness is both comfort and chaos. When they start to feel emotionally attached, they experience anxiety, because intimacy reminds them of helplessness they once felt but could not control. Their coping mechanism is to suppress emotions, to intellectualize their feelings rather than express them. They might analyze the relationship, question its logic, or find subtle reasons to disconnect, not because they've stopped caring, but because caring feels overwhelming. They live in constant negotiation with themselves, trying to love without losing control, trying to connect without collapsing the walls that protect them. The tension of this emotional paradox becomes their silent burden. This inner conflict also affects how they respond to love from others. When someone expresses affection toward them, it can feel suffocating, even if they secretly crave it. They may interpret genuine love as pressure and kindness as intrusion, not because they dislike affection, but because it disrupts the emotional distance they rely on to feel safe. They need love to feel stable, yet they fear what that love might awaken, the parts of themselves that are raw, unguarded, and dependent. So when love comes close, they instinctively build emotional barriers to keep control. They may withdraw, criticize, or minimize the connection, not realizing that these defenses only deepen their loneliness. Despite their outward composure, they feel everything deeply. The avoidance emotional conflict is not about a lack of feeling, but about feeling too much. Every tender emotion threatens to crack open the walls they've spent years maintaining. Every act of intimacy tests the limits of their comfort with exposure. When they fall in love, they don't experience lightness or simplicity. They experience intensity, confusion, and self-protection intertwined. It's why they can love someone profoundly and still create distance. The emotional pull is strong, but so is the instinct to protect their independence, to preserve the illusion that they don't need anyone. Over time, this internal tug-of-war exhausts them. They oscillate between wanting to be understood and fearing to be known. Their heart whispers that connection is worth the risk, but their mind insists that love equals danger. So they hover at the edge of intimacy, offering fragments of themselves, but rarely the whole truth. The person who loves them often feels caught in this cycle, mistaking their silence for indifference, when it's actually fear masquerading as control. Deep down, the avoidant knows what they want, to love freely, without walls. But they don't yet trust that love can exist without losing themselves in it. Their emotional conflict isn't coldness, it's self-preservation in disguise. It's the fragile balance between desire and defense, where love is both the wound and the cure, both the dream and the fear that keeps them awake. Transformation through trust is the most delicate and profound stage in the emotional journey of an avoidant who secretly loves someone. Trust is not just a feeling for them, it is the gate through which all vulnerability must pass before they can allow love to exist safely. Unlike those who open easily, the avoidant mind approaches closeness with suspicion, scanning every gesture and every word for signs of danger. They are not testing others to manipulate, they are testing to survive emotionally. Every bond they form must pass through layers of silent evaluation. Can I be myself here? Will my emotions be used against me? Is this person safe enough to see the parts of me I've spent years hiding? Only when the answer to those questions begins to feel like yes does transformation begin. When an avoidant starts to trust, the walls that once guarded their heart don't collapse all at once. They soften slowly, almost imperceptibly. Trust for them is not built through intensity, but through consistency. It is in the quiet reliability of your presence, in the way you don't force their emotions, in the calm patience that tells them they won't be punished for being distant. They need time to observe that closeness doesn't always lead to pain, that connection doesn't mean control, that love doesn't automatically demand the sacrifice of independence. With each safe interaction, a small crack appears in the armor they've worn for so long, allowing their deeper self to breathe. What looks like subtle change from the outside is an immense internal shift, because for the avoidant, feeling safe enough to trust is nothing short of rebirth. The transformation through trust is not sudden. It unfolds through repeated experiences that contradict their fears. When they see that their silence is met with patience instead of anger, or that their hesitations don't drive you away, they start to question their old beliefs about love. Their heart begins to rewrite the story it's always told, that closeness brings loss, that intimacy leads to pain, that love requires surrender of the self. As trust grows, they begin to relax into emotional presence, showing pieces of themselves they once kept hidden. They might start sharing personal stories, expressing appreciation, or allowing moments of genuine tenderness. These signs are small but monumental, because every act of openness represents a victory over the fear that once defined them. Trust allows them to replace control with connection. It teaches them that love doesn't have to feel like exposure. It can feel like safety. The person they love becomes a mirror where they can see themselves without judgment, where their imperfections don't lead to rejection. Through this mirror, they learn that intimacy and independence can coexist, that it's possible to be seen fully without losing themselves in the process. This realization begins to heal the emotional split within them, the constant war between their longing for connection and their need for distance. Trust bridges the two sides, integrating what was once divided, turning fear into openness and resistance into acceptance. As their trust deepens, the avoidant's love begins to take new shape. The same person who once avoided eye contact now lingers in conversation. The one who kept their emotions locked now starts to express warmth in small, unguarded ways. Their love transforms from silent devotion into quiet honesty, from guarded distance into gentle closeness. But this transformation only sustains itself when the environment remains emotionally safe. If that trust is broken, they retreat even deeper than before, reaffirming their old belief that love equals danger. That's why the process must be tender, patient, and real. The transformation through trust is not about changing who they are. It's about freeing the love that was always there but trapped beneath fear. Once they feel truly safe, their love becomes deeply loyal, steady, and sincere, often stronger than most because it has survived the test of fear. They begin to understand that vulnerability is not weakness, but the foundation of genuine intimacy. Through trust, their love no longer hides. It breathes, expands, and finally finds the courage to exist in the open. In the end, what was once guarded by silence becomes something unbreakably pure, a love that was never gone, only waiting for safety to set it free. In the hidden corners of an avoidant's heart lies a love that is not cold, but cautious, a love that exists behind walls built out of fear, not indifference. Their silence, their distance, their contradictions, and their restraint are not signs of emotional emptiness, but of a soul that has learned to protect itself from the pain of losing control. To understand them is to see beyond what they show and to feel what they cannot yet express. Their love is quiet, steady, and deeply sincere, but it blooms only in the presence of safety and patience. When trust replaces fear, when understanding replaces pressure, something extraordinary happens. Their guarded heart begins to unfold, revealing the depth of feeling that was always there, waiting to be accepted, not chased. True love for them is not about breaking down walls. It's about creating a space so safe that those walls no longer need to exist. And when that happens, the love they once hid becomes one of the most honest, loyal, and transformative forms of love a person can ever experience.